why we are here. I'm sure we'll have more trickle in. But my name is Maggie Peard. I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Officer in town. And you are here today, I hope, for the Zero Waste Plan public meeting. And really the purpose of this plan is to think about how we can take our diversion rate from where it currently is at 60% to 90% and over the next 10 years. So we're looking for feedback of kind of the steps that we have talked about as the planning team and get input from residents. For a bit of context of kind of how this plan started, back last year in 2022, town meeting passed a zero waste resolution. And the resolution really drew attention to the many reasons why Lexington needs to start acting to reduce our waste. Currently, nearly 9,000 tons of trash are sent to the incinerator each year in Lexington. So obviously this has a lot of negative environmental and health impacts, creates unnecessary greenhouse gas emissions. And it also has some environmental justice implications because our incinerator and the ash landfill are located in North Andover and Shrewsbury, which are a lot closer to state-defined environmental justice communities than the likes of Lexington is. So it kind of has effects beyond our borders as well. Also brought attention in that zero waste resolution was that in 2028, a lot of the landfills and incinerators in Massachusetts are scheduled to close. And that's going to really increase the town's disposal costs because we're going to have to start shipping out of state for a lot of our waste. So the more we can do as a local community to reduce the amount of waste, we'll see those costs go down quite a lot. And we're already seeing those costs increase for trash and recycling contracts today. And so we're kind of looking in line with the state goal to reduce solid waste by 90% by 2050. We're looking at, can we do that even sooner? And so this zero waste resolution called for the creation of a zero waste plan. And so soon after town meeting, we assembled a working group of town staff, community members, and consultants who have been working on the creation of this plan since then. So the goal was really to build off of a lot of the existing programs that the town already has. We have a lot of great assets already in Lexington. So things like our Cartwell composting facility where we have regional hazardous waste. We have yard waste disposal. And we also have things like single-use plastic bans, a lot of work to be done at the school by the Lexington public school green teams to bring composting. So we're starting in a good place, but we want to see how we can get even further along. So this plan is really a key step in thinking about what those policies and programs can be. So before turning it over to our consultants, I just want to thank and introduce all of the members of the working group who have been really key sitting in on meetings for this planning process, thinking about the public outreach survey, things like that. So the first other consultants on the team, Ruth Abbey and Amy Perlmutter, who've really been guiding the process. On the staff side, we have David Pinsino, who's the Director of Public Works, and Robert Bodwin, who's the Environmental Service Superintendent. And then we have members of the Lexington Zero Waste Collaborative in the room with us today, Han Nguyen and Janet Kern. And then members of the LPS Green Teams, Cindy Aaron and Diane Persley. Cindy's also the chair of the Sustainable Lexington Committee. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ruth, who's going to give a presentation about kind of where we are with the plan and give you some more information.
Great. Thank you so much, Maggie. And thank you everybody for coming. Good evening. I'm Ruth Abbey with Zero Waste Associates, and I'm joined here with my colleagues, Stephen and Dennis, who will also be helping out with our breakout rooms. And Amy, who is in the Berkshires, will be joining us shortly. She's in a little bit of traffic. So wanted to first kind of go over the agenda for this evening to let you know we're going to have the brief presentation on what is zero waste and what's in the Lexington Zero Waste Plan. And then we will have a few minutes for just sort of general clarifying questions. And that's really for everyone's benefit. You know, what's this, what's that, what do you mean by this, what do you mean by that. Want to keep that fairly limited because our real goal tonight is to sort of break into smaller groups. Here on Zoom, we're going to break into 2 or 3 groups. There on site, we're going to break into 2 or 3 groups and essentially really hear from you. Want a little bit more of a deep dive, get your detailed questions, get your input on the zero waste plan, make sure that it's reflecting the goals and the desires of the residents and business representatives from Lexington, and make sure that we can modify it appropriately. And then we will also discuss next steps, which once it's in a final form or a revised form, we'll bring that back to the select board. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with a short presentation on the zero waste plan. And this is what we're calling Lexington's Path to Zero Waste. First of all, as Maggie pointed out, we're currently in what we call the linear economy, which is most of what around the country we use. We take through resources extraction, we make through manufacturing, and we waste through landfilling and incineration. In Lexington, we're at 60% diversion, which means that 60% of what we generate actually goes back into recycling, composting, and reuse. And only 40% of what we have currently is in this take, make, waste system. That's pretty good. And it's leadership in terms of other communities across the country, but it's not our end goal, which is a higher amount of diversion and fewer impacts on our neighbors who live near the landfills and the incinerators. We are looking more towards a circular economy where the materials that we generate go into the economic mainstream again. So the materials that are recyclable go into new products, and the materials that are compostable go into compost so that that can be used for farms and food and go through the cycle again. That's our goal, is the circular economy. There is an internationally approved definition of zero waste. This is has been vetted around the world with international organizations that have all come together and said, this is what we mean when we say, what is zero waste? Zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges for land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. That is an aspirational goal. That is our ultimate goal. And but we will have milestones on that road to zero waste and a circular economy. This is the zero waste hierarchy. And again, just like we want to keep the materials that we generate, the recyclables and compostables, into that circular economy, before we even generate them in the first place, we want to rethink and reduce, right? We want to rethink, redesign, and reduce materials that we then generate and recycle and compost. So zero waste is all about thinking about what are all those things that we're doing currently, how could we do them better, more efficiently, and keep those materials recycled and compost. We'll go now a few drivers and benefits for communities. Maggie mentioned a few of these as well. One aspect is it really does reduce the impacts of climate change. Over 46% of emissions in the United States are attributable to goods and food, right? So the transportation, the creation, the manufacturing, bringing stuff to the table, all of that accounts for about 46% of greenhouse gas emissions nationwide, which is where we influence the zero waste system. So zero waste can reduce the impacts in climate change by reducing those emissions. Zero waste also creates jobs. It promotes local sustainability. It assists local businesses and promotes local food and nutrients back to the soil, and ultimately protects the health of residents and our neighbors who have to deal with the impacts of extraction and disposal. Here's kind of a snapshot of a number of the zero waste communities around the US. It is growing. We've identified about 100, 150. The US EPA has asked us to collect those up and verify. But these are the ones that either have zero waste plans or resolutions or have been signatories to the Urban Environmental Accords, which was established by the UN. So you can see we have zero waste communities, many in Massachusetts where we are, but also across the country. The zero waste drivers and benefits for businesses are also really important. Businesses actually lead the way to zero waste because businesses recognize that what doesn't go out as a product, if it goes out as waste, that's inefficient. That's a waste of money. So zero waste actually saves money for businesses. It reduces their liability. It increases efficiency. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions, creates a marketing edge, creates energy and saves energy and is the right thing to do. And so I've listed here a number of businesses that have been certified as zero waste businesses, meaning that they have achieved that 90% or above diversion rate and are actually models for leadership in zero waste. Sierra Nevada, for example, which has operations in both North Carolina and California, they're at a 99.8% diversion rate, and they're just looking for continuous improvement. That's one of the marks of a zero waste leader, is that we're always trying to improve. Maggie mentioned that Lexington's diversion rate is 60%. What that means is that 60% of all the materials that were currently generated are being diverted from destructive disposal through reuse, recycling, and composting. And only 40% are currently disposed of as trash in landfill and incinerators, which is good, but we know we can do better. And part of the reason we know we can do better is that this is a snapshot of what's in our trash. This is actually from a characterization study at the Wheelabrator North Andover incinerator. And so this is for all the communities, but that bring trash there, but it's representative of what's in the trash in Lexington. And I've marked here what is recyclable and compostable, and then other things that kind of require special handling and we'll have to work on. But you can see that the majority of items that we still throw away are either recyclable or compostable. And the biggest component of what is still in the trash is food at 23%. And so I know that the town is having a discussion about curbside collection of organics, which is very exciting. We heard that there are 1,500 folks signing up so far. And so this will really reduce what Lexington contributes to that incinerator. Among the things that are hard to recycle, I've added hard to recycle plastic. A lot of that is plastic bags and plastic liners and chip bags and other things like that. And we don't have really robust ways of recycling those right now. It also includes things like construction and demolition debris, particularly wood, asphalt, and carpet, and then other things like textiles and bulky items. We do have outlets for a lot of those things here in Lexington, particularly at Hartwell, where there are new programs for recycling mattresses, for example. And there's more opportunity for us to address these things that are still going to the incinerator. Here's the diversion potential from our zero waste planning analysis. So we looked at what was still going into the trash. We looked at what's currently being recycled and composted, and we say, what is the opportunity for doing better? So currently we're doing 60% on the diversion rate, as we've discussed. Implementing the short-term programs that are identified in this plan will get us to 72% in the next 1 to 3 years. A lot of this has to do with the collection system and the organics composting program. In the medium term, we can get to 79% over the next 4 to 7 years. And in the long term, over that 10-year planning process, we think we can get to 90%. And we're going to show you how. So hopefully you guys have there on the board there a poster that lists all of these different recycling, composting, what we're calling zero waste strategies. And you can see them all on one poster. But here I'm going to go through kind of each one of them in terms of a major category. So one major category that we have that Lexington is going to look into are changes to the current collection system. So number one, as discussed, expanding compost collection townwide, potentially converting to automated wheeled carts, and that would make it more cost effective and efficient to collect at night instead of the 6 individual barrels that we're all allowed to put out now. Instead, we would have wheeled carts that are more convenient, efficient to collect. Evaluate the rate structure incentives. If folks are only having a tiny cart for trash, should they pay less, or should they somehow be incentive to recycle and compost more? Evaluate every other week trash collection. This is an interesting one. So we have examples across the country and in Canada. In Ontario, Canada, for example, it's very common to see every other week trash collection and weekly collection of their little compost collection bin. And that's because most of what we have to throw away that's putrescible, in other words, with what rots, is compostable, and very little would we have to put out on an every week basis, because it's really just those plastics and other things that are pretty inert. Over on the West Coast, particularly in Oregon and Washington, we have a lot of examples of every other week collection where recyclables and compostables are collected every week, and trash is collected every other week. And this again provides some efficiency to the collection system. Whether this is appropriate for Lexington, we won't know until we study it some more, get more input on it, do some evaluation, look at what's going on in other parts of the state, and truly investigate this as an option, whether it would be cost effective or whether people would actually like it. And then to provide reuse collection as a part of the collection system. Right now, you might have to carry your materials either to Hartwell or to thrift stores or to the other places. Is there a way for us to collect things that are reusable, such as textiles or household goods, on a quarterly basis, for example? Under outreach and education, the initiative would be to expand outreach and education efforts to assist all generators, residential, commercial, institutional, to reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost. Currently, we do have great support from at the state level. They will come in and assist our businesses with education and instruct them in how to recycle and compost correctly, but we need to avail ourselves of more of those resources. We might also want to use either town staff or volunteers to help us go door to door, assisting our businesses, assisting our residents, our multifamily complexes in setting up the systems that are the most efficient for recycling and composting. I mentioned that technical assistance effort. This is Heather. She's actually, from the state program that provides technical assistance to schools and businesses. We would like more of Heather's time and the other staff that are engaged in that process, and potentially in the future down the road, enact a mandatory participation requirement. If we're all set up to recycle and compost correctly, maybe we should have a regulation or a rule that says we don't want any recyclables or compostables in the trash. That's something to think about down the road. We would also think about enforcing the state bans. State of Massachusetts has really robust bans, but they are not necessarily enforced at the local level. So we might need to enact some assistance to make sure that those bans that are state requirements are enforced locally. And then, of course, to recognize and certify green businesses who are doing the best they can, recognize the zero waste businesses that are already helping out in the town to make sure that they're reducing and reusing. Lead by example is a really important concept in the plan, and it's basically to make sure that the town is walking the talk, right? And so one of the ideas there would be for any town purchases to be environmental purchases by expanding the environmentally preferable purchasing program, where when we're buying recycled. and if we're not buying recycled content products and materials, we're not closing that loop, that circular economy loop. And so we really want to make sure that we are a part of that circular economy by purchasing material with recycled content whenever possible, and purchasing things that are less toxic in their manufacture and have the ability to reuse. There's also an opportunity for the town to invest in carbon farming, and that's when we take our compost and we apply it to lands, either nearby lands on parks and fields, or if we put that out to farms in the area, to put compost on farmland or on rangeland or on parkland. That actually sequesters carbon in the soil, because as the plants grow, their roots bring the carbon down into the earth, and that is actually a form of carbon sequestration. So we have an opportunity there to use our compost to actually sequester carbon. And then, of course, to provide market development incentives to actually maybe have more manufacturers in and around Lexington to purchase materials made out of recycled content and then making those into new products. I think we also want to touch on briefly the opportunity that we have at Hartwell. Lexington is really fortunate to have this beautiful regional facility where so much is going on and there's so much opportunity there. It's really it shows the leadership on the part of the town to have such a facility available, and really fortunate for town residents and businesses to have something like this available. So there is opportunity to do more at Hartwell, such as evaluating the opportunity for food scrap composting there. Currently, I believe our food scrap is taken outside of the town to another composting facility, but to evaluate Hartwell for expansion of food scrap composting, expanding the recycling and reuse drop-off. There's a lot that's going on now. A lot more could go on. Potentially developing glass processing. And this might need to be a regional facility, but essentially right now, it's relatively difficult to find markets for glass. And that's because you need glass manufacturing, you need glass processing, you need really good high quality glass in order to make that into new glass bottles. There are examples of towns that have glass processing on site. This might be something we want to consider for Hartwell to make sure that we again are closing that loop and making glass into new glass bottles. And then developing an education center at Hartwell, which would be great for our students and residents to go and learn about all of these things in the zero waste plan and the zero waste future, and to expand the materials building materials reuse. And that would be for our construction community when we are putting up a new building, or when we are taking down a new building or taking down an old building, deconstructing those buildings and making sure that we're appropriately reusing those materials. And then if we have to replace a door or a window, or get some nice dimensional lumber, there's a place for us to go and purchase that material. Here's an example of that deconstruction, construction, and demolition idea, which would be to have requirements for buildings that, and this again would be something to consider for the future, to adopt a deconstruction requirements whenever we're taking down a building, and then requiring that construction and demolition materials are appropriately reused or recycled when they are deconstructed or demolished. And then further expanding the policies and programs. So for example, possibly expanding the foodware ordinance to include a requirement for reusables for on-site dining. That might be something to consider. And just making sure that we are giving our residents and businesses the support that they need to do that. So that might be technical assistance, that might be small grants, that might be a program where folks become members to, they bring back their own, or they have a dishwashing program. So these are just opportunities to expand our product policies and potentially in the future require reusables for on-site dining. Okay, the last thing we always say when we are doing our zero waste presentations is, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? How much waste are you for? How about zero? All right. Now we're going to, I'm going to stop sharing in a minute. I did want to say that I am going to put in the chat and Maggie is going to make available to everyone who's attending a feedback form. And the feedback form is actually going to be the same questions that we're going to be talking about in our breakout sessions. But if you had to rush away, or if you had more thoughts, we want to make sure that we get, or if someone wanted to come tonight and we're not able to give feedback on the zero waste plan, Maggie has put this link on the town's website, so that you can fill out the form and give us feedback on the zero waste plan. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And we're now going to take questions. And Maggie, maybe you can facilitate on site. And for the folks that have questions that are here on Zoom, if you could just raise your hand, and we'll go through any questions that you may have. And then we'll break into small groups to have a deeper discussion. So anybody on site have a question, a clarifying question?
Yeah, we have a question from here.
An idea of using Hartwell after glass processing. I'm just wondering if there are glass manufacturers nearby that glass where are they?
And Maggie, you're going to have to repeat the question.
The question was, where are there glass manufacturing processing systems in Massachusetts if we were to have something local? Kind of where would that glass be sent to?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I don't know if Amy is on yet. Amy, are you here?
I am here, and
Yeah.
there is no bottle making in Massachusetts. So if glass were to be crushed at Hartwell, it could be used as aggregate. It could be used in building materials. There's a lot of things it could be used for, but not being turned back into bottles.
But there is opportunity for economic development if you had a very pure glass source locally. Would there be other things that Lexington and other nearby towns could think about doing? And some examples are in the Pacific Northwest, in Eureka, in Eugene, I'm sorry, in Eugene, Oregon, they actually have glass processing for the city of Eugene, and they make that glass into things like awards, like they might give away at a convention, or plates or cups or bowls made out of bottles. So, I mean, there is an opportunity, maybe not for a bottle, maybe not back into mayonnaise jars or soda bottles, but into other glass products would be if we had a nice pure source of recycled glass.
And there's a lot of things you can do with glass. I mean, I don't know what kind of equipment you'd need, but it could be mixed. Glass beads could be mixed with paint to make reflective paint for roads that you could use nearby. And it might be able to be used for glass blowing if you've got glass blowers around. That's actually something I've been interested in looking into, because I'm in Cambridge and we've got a glass blowing school there. And then if it's clean enough, if you can separate the colors and keep it clean enough, you actually can get a good price for it. In Connecticut, there's a bottle making. And then lastly, there might be opportunities to keep the bottles whole, collect whole bottles, and have a bottle washing that then washes the bottles and sells them back. I know in California for a long time, there was a company that took wine bottles and washed them and then gave them back to wineries to reuse. So there's a lot of options to look into.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now that Lexington is using single stream recycling, has there been a negative value to recycled material?
So that question was, because Lexington uses single stream recycling, is there a negative value to our recycling product, our recycled product?
Well, actually, my understanding is that there is a lot of value still, even though many towns actually pay for collection and processing of single stream. the processors then separate those materials and sell them as worldwide commodities. So even though we may need to actually pay for the collection and processing of the single stream or the dual stream materials, that's where you have bottles and cans separate from paper, there's still positive value. It's just not more than the cost of collection and processing. Would that be about right, Amy? Is that what you would say?
Yeah. I mean, I think the question was that question about glass in particular. If it was, glass doesn't tend to be a worldwide commodity. It's more local in nature, but yeah, I mean, there's a trade-off with single stream. So, you get more people participating. It's easier. On the other hand, materials are not as clean as they would be with the dual stream program, and even with a bottle bill. So bottle bill glass is very clean and gets probably the highest price. So the more you mix things, the harder it is to get them really clean, and the lower the value that will be, but there's not no value.
You have something related, Cindy?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's my understanding that the MRF and material recovery facilities that we send ourselves to in other countries as well, all handle the single cycle anyway. So even if as Lexington is a town, I know we want to separate unless we really do it all and collective and sort of bypass it going to the material recovery facilities, that they're going to put it all together anyway with a bunch of other stuff. So it would have to be a more coordinated statewide thing to take advantage of that.
Did folks on Zoom hear that?
No, you'll have to summarize for us.
Okay. So we were saying, Cindy said that the regional processing centers for recycling are already single stream. So even if Lexington was separating their waste, the places that we send them to would combine it again. So it'd have to be a much larger process to make it not single stream. Yeah.
Are there dual stream MRFs in Massachusetts?
The question was, are there dual stream MRFs in Massachusetts?
Not using.
Oh, you're muted, Amy, if you're responding.
Sorry about that. The Springfield MRF I know has a dual stream line. I thought that there were others. I thought that the Charlestown MRF had a dual stream line too, but I might be wrong about that. I definitely know the Springfield MRF has a dual stream line. I just don't know enough about the others.
And we have a couple of questions here on Zoom, Maggie, if you want to.
Yeah, you can take
Take
a couple
those?
of those, and then we have another hand afterwards in the room.
Okay. Roseanne, did you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Sure. When people are putting their recycling out in the rain or the dew point is high, does that pretty much trash the value of the paper recyclables?
It's not ideal, but if you think about how paper is recycled, it's recycled with water, right? So at a paper recycling facility, when they get the bales of sorted paper, they shred it and slurry it, and they make it and they add water. So as long as the paper is not deteriorated by mold, right? So that would help. That would tend to deteriorate the paper. The wet paper can be recycled and it gets to the facility. It typically does dry out. They will bale it. They will sell it. The only danger, I think, is really that it might start to mold, right?
Yep.
And I think
That's
it
what I
makes
was
it
asking.
harder to sort it too.
Yeah, so it's better to keep it clean, dry. Clean and dry is always best for recycling.
As I listened to the questions, it might be really interesting or helpful for a follow-up webinar or event where you have somebody who from the MRF come and talk to you about what goes on there, and perhaps do some tours for citizens too, because I think the more we understand the processes, the better we can put the right things into the bin in the right way. And the more interesting it is, it makes people want to participate.
Yeah, and Amy, I think it's beyond the MRFs. I think there's an educational piece here for Lexington residents, because I My observation is most people aren't thinking about that, right? They're putting out their recyclables in the rain and not thinking about the impact.
We have another question on line here, and then we have a couple of questions in the chat as well, Maggie, but we'll go ahead and take another question from John. Do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Thank you very much, Ruth. I have actually two quick questions. I was influenced by ABC News's piece about the large number of plastic bags that start off in recycling bins and end up in landfills or incinerators. And my question is, with regard to the overall recycling materials collected in recycling bins in Lexington, what percentage are ending up in incinerators or landfills? Without regard to whether they're plastic bags, contaminated for other reasons, or can't find a home that goes through recycling.
I'm not sure if we have a direct knowledge of the residual level at the MRF. Do we happen to know that, Maggie or Dave?
We have a hand up in person, Cindy.
Yeah, thank you. So, we have, LPS Green Team has visited our MRFs. We actually have a video on our website about it. It's certainly good to still keep talking to them. We haven't done like serious audits, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 to 17% of what we put in our recycle bin is considered essentially for it costs the processing facility money because it really is trash. It's not recyclable. Then from that point on, whatever you can imagine that in each point of the process, once all the MRF does is separate it and then sell it off to somebody else, and then they go and process it. So there's probably a bit of loss at each step of the way. But we're at this point, I don't even think the state of Massachusetts has those numbers. So, it's a good percent of the things that are correct. Cardboard, aluminum cans, your milk jugs, kind of thing. But so there's not an exact number, but it's a good chunk. It's not nothing. It's not most of it.
Yeah, and Maggie, can you summarize what Cindy said? Sorry.
Yeah. So she was saying that LPS Green Team has gotten a tour of our MRF, and they haven't done a formal audit, but their estimate of kind of the amount of contamination of trash items that cannot be recyclable was, what did you say? 11 to 17%. And that there might not be like a statewide study on that, but that's a good estimate for where we are locally.
And I think John's question was really about the things that are destined for recycling. So the paper, so not the trash, but the paper and the bottles and the cans. Do we have high confidence that those are going to the right place, as opposed to that news story about the plastic bags that don't seem to be ending up in the right place? And I think we have a fairly high confidence level because they are marketed as commodities. And it would be, again, a great question for the MRF operator if we hosted another webinar about that specifically. What are your markets? I know that there are some towns that have asked for more transparency about how the materials are marketed because they are concerned about it going to international rather than domestic markets. And some towns have made restrictions on that and said, we only really want you to market our recycled materials in domestic markets in North America.
Well, and I'll just add one other thing. So I know there's a question in the chat about China, and years ago when China started cracking down on recycling from other countries coming into China, and the list, what was happening to the materials was changing, and what materials were being recycled. Mass DEP brought all the MRF operators together and surveyed them and said, what is actually being recycled? And the recycling list that they have and that the towns use is things that are where there is a recycling market. Nothing's being taken where there isn't a market. Now, sometimes markets may vary, or there might be contamination and something might have to get trashed, but for the most part, nobody's telling you to recycle something that is just getting thrown away. And when you think of it logically, it's costs the town less money for the recycling contract than it does for the trash contract per ton. And so it would make more sense to put something that's trash in the trash and not in the recycling from the standpoint of the collectors and the processors.
Yeah, my concern is simply that our environment deserves no less than
Yeah.
accurate feedback as to how our recycling facilities are functioning. And if in fact our intended recycling materials are ended up in landfills and incinerators, that's something that we'd better find out and deal with now rather than waiting for more catastrophic results with our environment. So, but thank you for your feedback. And I know this is something you'll keep reporting to us back in Lexington as this discussion continues.
Before we jump to the next question, I think we had a direct follow-up in. Yes. So two pieces there. The first was kind of a similar question about plastic recycling and kind of the understanding that we're really downcycling rather than true recycling of a lot of plastics. And there's a lot of uncertainty about where plastic recycling ends up. And then the second piece was, oh yeah, single-use plastic, or whether that's in the plan. And that there's product policies was one of our actions in the plan, and that's looking at kind of bans of single-use plastics.
So are you ready for another question there from Kalia? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, we can go to the next question.
What's your
I'm Kalea, and when I was little, like my mom, like our family saved, like reduced like the amount of trash we had by a lot because we used cloth diapers instead of like diapers that you throw away. And is there like any effort in Lexington to like use cloth diapers?
That's a great question. I think that would be a great thing for the outreach and education portion to have parents who've had success using cloth diapers to help promote that with other parents, for absolutely sure. That is a great idea. Does anybody from the working group have any comments on that?
I would just say, yeah, I think that's a really great idea. It's such a huge waste stream. That's something we talked about at our compost pilot launch, because nothing associated with diapers can be compostable. So it definitely is kind of an area that there's a lot of extra waste. So I agree. It's something that we should look at.
Great idea. We have a number of questions in the chat, Maggie, but are there other questions on site that we want to get to? And then probably in a couple of minutes, we do want to get to our breakout rooms.
Yeah, you can take a few more on Zoom.
Okay, so and maybe these can also be answered off-site. Okay, so one is the pie chart of waste items. There was a section that included diapers. What % of our trash is from diapers, and have there been community efforts to help parents switch to cloth, which was exactly what Kalea was asking about. And that portion that includes diapers on that pie chart, it says hazardous waste, biohazard, that was all diapers. And I think it was something like 5%. Let me get to that. I'll get back to the I'm just getting back to the pie chart for a second. Yeah, so and if I can share again. Oops, lost you guys for a minute. Here I go. This is a great question and timely for our discussion on diapers. So if you look at this pie chart, that number 5% HHW, including diapers, that is mostly diapers. So 5% of what we throw away at the incinerator in North Andover from all the communities is diapers. So it looks like we have a great opportunity and a new discussion item for our initiatives. And then the next question was about the long-term plans for recycling paper. The Chinese had good reason to cut us off. And that was really about that we were exporting to a specification that was too much trash. And so we were exporting too much trash to China. But the importers of our recycled paper and our domestic mills do need recycled paper. So we have a high level of confidence that the paper that is being separated at the MRFs here in Massachusetts and being marketed locally and internationally is going to paper mills that can pulp it and make it into new paper. I think we have gotten over that issue around the China National Sword, which was really about the specifications for recycling. The MRFs are requiring a much higher level of compliance with the spec, very little contamination, and they are meeting that requirement by and large. And then John had asked about what accommodations are making for people with disabilities who would have difficulty moving the recycling carts. And absolutely, so in any new collection system that requires something to do differently, either for a senior or for a disabled person, there would be an accommodation for moving the recycling cart onto to it being serviced. So for example, where I live, my mom is 85 and she called her company and asked for accommodation. The driver goes down to her house, retrieves her bin and has it collected. That's a part of the service for folks that are either disabled or frail elderly. Many people put recyclable plastic bags for pickup. And I thought there was going to be an effort to educate these citizens by putting a sticker on the bags and not picking them up. Is that still being planned? Clearly, many people are aware. That might be a question for Maggie, or in terms of enforcement of no plastic bags.
I know it's something in our zero waste plan. I'm not sure if there were previous efforts in town to do that. It's possible somebody else on the working group team knows.
Okay.
I can
Go ahead,
jump in, Ruth. So the vendor is instructed that if they find something that does not comply, to put the stickers on. Unfortunately, a lot of it depends on the driver. Some of them are very good at it and some of them just take whatever is there. So there is an effort to do that through the vendor that's out collecting.
Thanks so much, Dave. And then sort of the last issue here, and then I think we'll go to our breakout rooms for further discussion, but was about, I've been told that all black plastic is trashed by the recyclers because the sensors can't pick it up. And that's really MRF dependent. You know, some material recovery centers, material recovery facility, recycling facilities do not have the sensors to actually see the black plastic. And that's why in some towns, the black plastic is discouraged. In other towns, it is accepted because they have the technology to separate it and market it. So that would be a specific question for the MRF operator if they are able to handle the black plastic. Any other last really urgent clarifying questions before we go into breakout rooms?
Doesn't look like we have any in the room.
Okay. And Maggie, how many rooms are you going to break out into on site and how many should we break out into Zoom?
I think we'll do 2 on site and looks like maybe 3 online.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and organize ourselves here and you guys organize yourselves out there. You can mute us and then come back at 10 minutes before the hour. We're going to be out for 30 minutes. Okay, so we'll all convene back at 10 minutes before the hour. Kalea, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, so like another thing is that at school, like during snack time, like the trash bin fills up like really high with a bunch of like snack packages, like chip bags and things like that. Is there like any effort to make packaging that's not plastic, that's like compostable?
That is a great question. Amy, did you want to address the compostable foodware for schools?
Well, I mean, I think that candy wrappers and things like that is sort of, that's a bigger issue. That's the companies that make these products have to do it. So maybe an option instead of compostable would be to buy things in bulk and have dispensers, right? So the snacks could be dispensed into something reusable instead of having disposable wrappers. But I think that a lot of companies understand that there's concern over all the disposable single-use plastics and are looking for alternative materials to make their products from.
I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms. I've assigned Amy and Stephen to room 1, and then a bunch of you will join Amy and Stephen there. And then I've assigned Cindy and Hyen to room 2, and then a bunch of you will join them there. And then everybody else who remains in this room that didn't get an assignment will have our breakout room with myself and with Dennis. So I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms and then see if you can figure out how to join in. Amy, is that clear? Down at the bottom, there's something called breakout rooms. And if you click on that, it'll see if you're assigned. And if you didn't get assignment, that means you're staying in this room. So Cindy, are you able to find that? Oops, Cindy. Oh, maybe Cindy's getting there.
She's just getting set into a different room.
Okay, she is. Okay.
I don't have breakout rooms showing up on my, it always does, but for some reason it's not there right now.
You are probably assigned to stay here.
Okay.
Okay. So right now in room 1, we have a nice selection of folks. And then in room 2, we only have a few people, so they may have to come back. All right. So let's see. Okay. Hyen went there. All right. So welcome everybody. We have I thought we would go around the room of the folks who are in this room and just have us each introduce ourselves, and then any key issue that you want to discuss, and then we're going to go through a list of questions and comments. Dennis is going to take notes, and then they will report back when we get back at towards the top of the hour. So let's see. I don't know who. Maybe you can mute yourself. Florence, if I call on you guys, can you introduce yourself? Do you want to unmute?
Hey, I'm Florence.
Hi.
Hey, I appreciate this. This is wonderful to hear about. I'm very concerned about our environment. Very, very concerned. So any kind of information I can pick up tonight will alleviate my concern.
Great. And who do you have there with you?
My husband, Ward.
Hi,
I
Ward.
support Florence. Yeah.
Welcome. All right. Joyce, are you able to unmute and tell us who you are and what you're interested in?
Whoop, whoop.
No, Joyce. Oh, are you there?
Back again.
All right. Let's ask Roseanne. Roseanne, you had a good question. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Roseanne Essiambre. And for several years now, I've only put out about 4 bags of trash each year. So I'm kind of through the major stuff and more on the minutia stuff on what I can do to keep that out of the waste stream, and have several ideas to discuss in the breakout tonight.
Oh, perfect. All right. How about Ricky?
Hi, Ricky Papo. I'm with the Lexington Climate Action Network, and I'm interested in waste reduction. You aptly pointed out that it is a big contributor to climate change, and it's one of the things I think we can get a hold of. We've got to get the companies to be doing more, but I think we can get a hold of a lot of things on our own to kick things off. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. How about Tina?
Hi, Tina McBride. I am with LPS Green Teams and LexCan and Zero to Go. I put out a bag of trash a week. I have 3 kids, did cloth diapers with everybody, and would love if we were able to help more people shift away from that, because that is a big percentage of our waste, and I didn't realize that it was that big. But yeah, encouraged by all of this.
Awesome. We'll want to call on you to be leadership in helping your neighbors to do better. How about Renee?
Hello. So I'm with Lex Zero Waste and super excited that we're coming further along with this with the town. And one of the things that's near and dear to my heart is the education piece. And as our organization, we have been trying to plan an event to go to the MRF, to bring people there and videotape it so that we can then, post that and have people continuously watch, because I think it's just so much about the education and what works and what doesn't. And we within our organization have done some outreach with the Monroe Center for the Arts to highlight things that are not recyclable. For example, last year we did black plastics, and this year we're doing aseptic containers. And when I walk my dog around town and I look into people's recycling, there's still so much of those things. And so it's just a constant way of like, what are the other things that we can do to reach more people? And Fran Ludwig also did say in the chat, you do see people putting their recyclables in plastic bags. And so then nothing is recyclable. And I think, people just don't know. I think everyone wants to do the right thing, and how we can continue to educate.
Perfect. Thank you for your leadership. Have we heard from Brian? Hi, Brian. Or how about Bijan? Bijan, you want to unmute and introduce yourself? Nope. Okay. Let's see. Was that everybody? Oh, are you there? Bijan? Or Brian? Or Joyce?
Hey, everybody. Bijan and I have this thing. We're in different rooms. So we're trying to he's on a different device in another room. So he's trying to come over to here right now. Thanks.
Oh, okay. All right. And then you'll let Dave and he knows to come back.
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay. All right, good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate the turnout and the interest in zero waste. We wanted to kind of go through. Oh, good. Did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Bijan?
Sure. I'm Bijan Hasrafiani. I'm a Lexington resident, and also I work in Lexington. And I work actually in the area of energy efficiency, and we help builders, developers, architects, homeowners to build a better home and more energy efficient, and etc. Is that enough?
That's great. That's great. So our kind of first question for everybody, and we can kind of all take turns, is what was your reaction to the recommendations in the zero waste plan? What stood out to you? What made you excited? Was there anything missing? Who would like to sort of go first and provide some input?
I can start. Frankly, I think somebody else proposed it too. Well, I'm supposed to know, but we have done many things around our house, including compost, etc., from a few years ago. But as far as recycling is concerned, I really don't know. I still don't have a clear idea what eventually becomes, where we think this is going to go. And for example, I don't know really what's the definition of, we talked about the paper in, clean paper, etc. But what is the threshold? How how clean the paper should be or how not clean the paper should be or the cardboard should be. For example, the pizza boxes, right? A little bit of it is oily, I would always question, is this really recyclable or not? But I put it in the recycle anyway. I'll let them decide, because I don't know. So I think education is very important. I hear that, the plastic bags, I never put them into the recycle bin because I know that they can tangle up their recycling machine. But we have a separate big plastic bag in our garage that we put all our plastic in there, and then my wife or she takes it to places, supermarkets, etc., where they have the plastic bin. As someone mentioned, I watched that ABC that they have done a 3 years research with those tags in the plastic bag. Unfortunately, a great percentage of them, they are ending up in the landfill and never made the recycle. We think they are going to be recycled. But anyway, education. So we know what is really happening once we put things in the recycle bin, etc. So then we can make a better choice, really, of what to do. Thank you.
That's great. And just to let you know, we did do a townwide survey last year, and that transparency in our recycling system did come up a lot. So I think residents and business representatives in Lexington want to know that when they are trying to do the right thing is happening. So that's a great opportunity for education. I know that the operators of the recycling facilities would want the folks to be better educated so that they could sort correctly. So that's a really great point. I see we have some folks that have their hands up, so we'll just kind of go in order. Raise your hand if you want to get in the queue, but let's go to Ricky first.
So if I'm remembering your list correctly on sort of tasks to fit into this 10-year program. So composting was number one, and I think that's the easiest lift. I mean, especially based on the composting pilot taking off so quickly with so many people signing up very quickly. So if we could get over that hump of getting everybody in town to compost, we would reduce our trash by, I think it's 35% is the term I've used. I saw a different number that you showed, Ruth, so I'm not sure what the correct number is, but it's a big reduction. It's also a big reduction in the weight of your trash, because most of the weight of your trash is the water soaked food items. So if you take those and you're putting them out every week in composting, then the follow-up is that every other week trash, because that trash doesn't smell, it's light, it's, you can smash it down and keep fitting more in that bag. But one thing that was not on your list, which is something that Lexington did many years ago, it is definitely is a little bit of a hot topic for people who've lived in Lexington long enough, was we had something called pay as you throw, or also known as trash metering. When pay as you throw was instituted in Lexington, there was an amazing reduction of trash being put out immediately. I mean, part of that program was to get people to recycle. It worked. All of a sudden the recycling bins were full, and that's when they were taking a lot more things in recycling, and they were taking all plastic. But it really worked, and it allowed people to put out a certain amount of trash every week, or this would be every other week, for free. But anything beyond that, so you're cleaning out your basement, you're doing that major clean out, then you pay for an extra barrel or 2 or 3 that week. So I think there's a place for that in this plan that I didn't see. So that's my suggestion. Thanks.
I'm going to share my screen. This is a little bit of a cheat sheet. It's called Lexington Zero Waste Initiatives. Can you see that okay? And essentially, this is the list that I went over The additional thing is it provided the time frame, which I really didn't get to in the discussion. So I just wanted to quickly show you changes to the collection system happening in that short term, 1 to 3 years, education and outreach also short term, technical assistance, lead by example, etc. And I can leave this up, or I can take it down, or I can maybe figure out how to put it in the chat. But in any case, I wanted to show you that evaluate rate structure incentives is something like looking at pay as you throw or other ways of incentivizing folks to reduce trash. So we didn't use the term pay as you throw because, quite frankly, it's a little bit of a hot topic, as you pointed out. Pay as you throw was one type of rate structure incentive. And we thought that what really the town needs to do is to investigate what has worked in other towns, what doesn't work. This idea of trash metering, where instead of having 6 barrels, we might all get 1 cart or 2 carts. That would be another way of doing potentially a rate structure incentive, or somehow limiting the amount of trash we're putting out, but giving ample opportunity for recycling and compost. So now that the town is investing and encouraging this curbside compost collection, we have more opportunity to reduce our trash. So I just wanted to show that to you. So that is on the list. Don't tell anybody, but
Okay,
I mean,
no,
that is essentially the pay as you throw placeholder, but it may
Okay.
not be pay as you throw. It may be some other type of program.
Okay, thanks. I saw that rate incentive and I wondered if that was it. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no, good points. Roseanne, did you want to go next?
Come off mute. So I'm going to second Bijan's piece about education. I think that is huge for our town, for the residents. I think we can be doing a much better job about getting that information out there. And it's not just how to do it. I think it's also why we're doing this, right? What the impacts are to our neighbors in Andover, what this means for your children. Because I definitely have neighbors who don't care, or, they're putting out whatever. So I really think education is a big piece of that. Along those lines, and I think I saw audit in the plan, but I apologize, Ruth, I can't remember exactly what that was related to. It really seems like auditing recycling bins in town would help, and auditing the drivers apparently as well, because based on the comment the gentleman made, the driver's definitely not doing it on my street. I know this because I see neighbors putting styrofoam and all sorts of things in their bins that can't be recycled. And I've even said that to them and they're still doing it. So the driver's still picking it up. So there's no accountability there for them putting in things that can't be recycled. I'd also wonder, how is that single-use plastic ban going to be enforced? And the whole black plastic piece in town, if you look at if you look at Wilson Farms and the businesses in town, the restaurants, they're using these black plastic takeout containers all over the place. So, what are we doing about that? And then lastly, I'd say this is a small piece of our trash, yet it is still happening in town. There was no styrofoam collection going on at Hartwell. However, I found out through the grapevine, there's one in Arlington. So I reached out to a network and found somebody in Arlington who would take the styrofoam for me to their facility. So why can't we do that here?
That's what we call problem materials, right? I do
Yes.
think there is a description in the plan of what there might be an opportunity to do at Hartwell with more drop off for recyclable materials, including things that are what we call hard to recycle. In Boulder, it's called the CHARM, the Center for Hard to Recycle Material. And in Boulder, and I visited the site, they do collect styrofoam and they have a styrofoam densifier. And we don't like styrofoam and we should never bring styrofoam into our homes, but we all get it anyway because it comes with a lot of things that need to be protected and we get that, right? So while those things are changing, is there an opportunity to collect these hard to recycle things at Hartwell? That's something definitely the town will want to examine. What do we want to include? What's practical to include? What can we do cost effectively? What do people want? And certainly those things that are not appropriate to put in the curbside bin, like styrofoam, would be good candidates for that charm center at Hartwell. So that's definitely something that the town should take into consideration for sure. And then in terms of the enforcement of the single-use items, we're seeing this happen around the country where towns are looking to reduce those single-use items, particularly the foodware and the straws, et cetera, and the enforcement has to be incremental and somewhat gentle, right? Because we've just come out of COVID, restaurants were particularly impacted, and so a lot of foodware ordinances got put on pause. And now that they're coming back, I think what we're seeing is a lot of incentives. So for example, getting grants and things in order to give an incentive to the restaurant to switch, for example, from single-use plastics to reusables. We've seen a lot of success with that. Technical assistance, providing technical assistance to the restaurant to switch. And then ultimately, after technical assistance, support, grants, enforcement to say, we just can't recycle black plastic here. We really can't have you give it out as a part of our town regulation. So that's definitely something that is to be investigated, but it would definitely have to be incremental and over time and come with a lot of love, right? But those are great points, and Dennis is writing all of these down. Renee, did you want to go next?
So I just also wanted to add, I love the idea that the town is doing the 2,000 residents to do the free composting. And I really like the idea of trash pickup every other week. And hopefully the money that we save with that we can really have residential composting, throughout the entire town for free. So that would be great. And within Zero Waste, we're currently doing a Zero to Go program with reusable takeout, and it's with one single restaurant. And obviously the hope is to reach out to all establishments in town to start participating as well. And one final sort of question comment about the cleanliness of our recyclables. So as we started talking, I was wondering, so when we put cardboard boxes out that are crushed that still have tape, is that clean enough, or should we be taking all of the tape off of the boxes?
I think the short answer to that is you do not have to take the tape off the boxes. And this is why, I've been on tours of pulping mills, and a lot of those types of contaminants. Now, grease might be another thing. Bijan asked about grease. Probably we don't want to put any food scraps in with our paper and that sort of thing. We want to avoid that. But things like tape do come off in the pulping process, so they're able to handle some contamination. And I think generally what I've heard from manufacturers, from folks that are selling material, is that they can handle about a 3 to 10% contamination rate, depending on the commodity. And then they, have the lower the percentage of contamination, the better, the higher price that the recycler will get for it. But that 3 to 10% threshold is acceptable depending on the manufacturer, the pulper, the can manufacturer, etc. Did you have another point, Ricky, or did you want to respond to any of that?
No, I did have another question.
Yeah, please.
So I put this in the chat, but I wanted to bring it up, which is the town looked into a Recycle IQ grant, or was going to look into it, and then the pandemic came. But I think the intention of that was people would go around, volunteers would go around and say, look into a bin and see black plastic, and could put a notice on saying, by the way, black plastic is not recyclable. And it's an educational opportunity to talk with the resident who put that out but didn't know. I learned black plastic wasn't recyclable by hearsay, and hearsay is not a great educational tool. So what I wanted to ask you, Ruth, and your colleagues is, what have you found to work for education? Because I've heard that from a lot of people. you know, if I've told friends, you know, black plastic isn't recyclable, and they're so, I don't know that. How come I don't know that? And so if you've run into doing some educational programs in a town that have really had an effect, you know, noticeable effect, like all of a sudden, you know, start seeing a drop off on things that are getting recycled that should not be recycled, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, maybe you know the status of the Recycling IQ grant?
Yeah, so the grant came and went because the pandemic, and that money we were not able to use, but we do have a new trash and recycling contractor beginning July 1. As part of their contract, we are requiring them to do that audit. So that will be done, you know, sometime within the next, you know, 3 to 4 months or so, but that's going to be a requirement of their contract.
That's great. And then in answer to your question about best practices, I'm aware of a report, and if I get a chance, I'll put it in the chat. It's from Solid Waste Association of North America. And that report did an evaluation of what works in terms of messaging for curbside, and that door to door to door, you know, oops tags, right? Where they look into your cart or your bin and they say, oops, you put in black plastic, or oops, we don't take any food scraps in with the recycling. That actually works. And so some states are now requiring that as just a part. You just have to audit everybody every year, at least once, right? But that, what we call, you know, boots on the ground, going to every household and an audit and giving those oops tags. It's better if it's like every week, right? But now with you know, labor issues and automated collection and other things, it's a barrier to like looking into everybody's bins. But to do that audit, so that folks are just getting the right information and then leaving behind information to say, oops, but did you know? And here's how to do it. So I can share that study in the chat when I get a chance. Roseanne?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. I don't know if David saw it in the chat. That audit that you were talking about, that's part of the contract. What does that entail, and what happens from that audit?
So they will be doing that. They'll be checking the recycling, seeing what people are putting out, doing those, as Ruth mentioned, those oops tags. And then our hope then is to get that information and use that as an educational piece, that here's what we're finding in our recycling, here's the things you can and can't, or how that should be done. So it'll be a combination of all of those things that we'll pull together and have it be educational.
And what's the frequency they'll be doing those audits?
So right now it'll be on a yearly basis, and then we are going to be looking to get grant funding to, you know, to perhaps do something in the interim.
You know, we're kind of running up on our time frame where we're supposed to go back in the big room. I see that they are still assembled back there, but I'm going to give a little notice to the other room and maybe ask them to come back and join us, because we did, you know, we kind of scheduled this for 90 minutes. We don't want to keep you guys too long. But while I'm assembling everybody, did somebody else have another comment or question?
I do. Go ahead. So my question is actually, you know, I've been planning with my 14-year-old daughter to make a video, quick video clips to basically share with what we have done around our house, and maybe other people can benefit from it. So like the nice products that we found out there, in, you know, talking about compost, it's a very nice product. I can share it with you, little buckets that has a very, I think, innovative way of opening the doors, and it works great. And now we were talking about every other week, or some towns, they are doing every other week recycle, you know, bins. After we have started compost, every other month, we put one of these big recycle bins that we showed the slides, you know, that eventually we are going to get one of those. but I have one of those, and believe it or not, every 2 months, that's what I put out as a trash. And that's it. And my job as a father of this family is much easier to do it once every 2 months than every week. And then the compost, no, I have to put it out every week. And the recycle bin, we have 3 bins, and actually we almost always use them every week. We fill it's full of recycle. Now, again, but the education is important, I think, and the sooner I like to do it, because for this video clip that we want to make, I really still don't know the truth, the whole truth, what is happening. So if I can learn, then I can inform people. But I think the best way would be to see from A to Z what happens when we put in. So for example, I remember I used to live in California for 20 years. So at one point back then, we were saying that special, different type of plastics, not every type of plastic can be recycled. So for example, the ones that I got an iced coffee today from, wherever, the iced coffee comes in a hard type of plastic, thin plastics. Now, my question is this, first of all, if this material is recyclable, second, how clean should it be? If I have Sprite in it, is that good enough? I can throw it, or I usually put them in my dishwasher at nighttime with other dishes. I mean, if I have room, I just put them in there to make it clean in the morning, and then I put it into recycle. But I frankly have no idea what is recyclable and what is not. So again, going back to the education, as soon as possible, that would be a great help. Thank you.
I think with the new contractor, we're going to get a lot of new information, and it will be the responsibility of the contractor in the town to get the word out. And then it sounds like we have a lot of leadership in Lexington that will be able to support and expand the messaging. So I think it's great, the folks that are here that volunteer with the city, that volunteer with the nonprofits that can help expand the messaging. It sounds like we really have what it will take to get that done. Okay, well, I am going to ask the folks in room 1 to come over. They might not be quite ready. So let's see. I'm just going to go over to the room 1 for a minute. So Hayun, do you mind kind of facilitating the conversation for a couple of minutes while I go ask them if they're ready to join? Okay.
All right, it looks like
So just
looks like we need to maybe get back. Are we done?
Yep.
See Ruth.
All right.
Thank
So,
you.
see you in the
Nice
big
to
room.
see you all.
Bye.
Take care.
Recycling rate really high up?
Yeah, and Robert Bodwin, our environmental services superintendent, has been in touch with neighboring communities. So they do talk about that. So I'll mention that to him so that we can do that. I was going to add quickly as far as the video goes, that would be a great idea. We just had a video done on the food waste composting. And that, we'll have to check with Maggie, but that should be going up on the town's website if it's not already there. So any of those educational pieces that we can do, we're happy to have them and put them up because it helps residents understand. So yeah, what I would do is, Bijan, go ahead and reach out to Maggie Peard about that, and we can see what we can come up with for that.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Hey, so we got our breakout room folks back, and I thought we could take a few minutes to kind of share back and forth. Back in the room that looks like they're still going, but we can do our own thing. So Stephen and Amy, did you want to kind of go ahead and tell us a little bit of the highlights about what came up in your room?
Yeah, I'm happy to share some quick notes. So what I want to share is the things that we're excited about coming from our breakout room. There's excitement that compost collections are going to come from or are going to be established at home. So there's going to be less trash. Education was a big topic in our breakout group, and we're excited about getting the message out so that people can be aware of it and participate in the program. Lexington in general is excited about environmental supports, and yeah, just education, messaging, and communication, and how that's going to be worked on within the zero waste plan.
Great. Anything else to add from the breakout room, folks? Amy, did you want to add anything?
Just the pay as you throw was controversial.
All right. Any participants there wanted to highlight that a little bit more? Okay. Well, we know we got work to do there. Dennis, do you mind sharing some of the highlights from our room?
Yeah, of course. So it seems like there was a lot of clarification that people wanted around like what is exactly recyclable or what is compostable. And like how clean is clean paper supposed to be, and what about pizza boxes, things like that. There were some questions about hard to recycle materials such as styrofoam or black plastic, and a big overall takeaway that people were really interested in related to like not only the technical aspects of expanding capacity for recyclable and compostable materials, but also how do we reach people out there, and how could messaging be made in such a way that could help make information more accessible. So
Hello,
yeah.
you're back. Sorry.
Hey, you're back. Dennis was just sharing from our room. So keep going, Dennis.
Yeah, and let me think. So there was some discussion about how starting July 1st, there's going to be a new contractor doing annual waste audits. And the hope is that figuring out what people are putting in their recycling or organics bins will help inform messaging of, okay, if people are putting in this material, say like black plastic in the recycling, and it's not actually recyclable, then maybe there should be like messaging around that. So yeah, a lot of curiosity and clarification, and it was a good discussion.
There's a lot of interest in wanting to recycle right here in Lexington. So I think that's a really good takeaway. And it sounds like the town is really focusing on that for the next contract. So there was a lot of excitement about that too. Did anybody from this main room want to supplement anything that Dennis said?
We'll just do our report back.
Well, we'll take it back over to you guys to report in on how did you guys do back on site?
Hi, it's Janet here.
Hi, Janet.
So we had a great discussion. I would say just in summary that most of our discussion focused around education, whether it be the current resources we have in town now with our website, brochures for recycling and waste, that they could be improved, whether it has to do with composting and how we manage to get composting at some of the larger apartment complexes, and the education that would be needed to be able to, for residents to be able to do it effectively and correctly, and what would be required in terms of culture change and behavior change to really be successful with our efforts to compost, especially, but with all of any new waste diversion techniques that we use. And so there were a lot of ideas about different ways that we can try to engage people and demonstrate taking advantage of neighborhood groups. But there's also towards the end, really important conversation started about the need to understand the markets that are there, and you know, how we actually do take advantage of what we want to do. But no, we need to know the market that's there for our recyclables and for our waste so that we can have that circular economy. Anything more that
Great. And did you guys have another breakout room that was going to report in?
We ended up just doing one big group, so that was
Just one room. Okay. So I think a lot of what we heard was very consistent, right? We need to do better education. We have great excitement and opportunity around the compost collection. There's some controversy, but opportunity with rate structure incentives or potentially trash metering, but all that will be further investigated before it's actually proposed as a solution for Lexington. Wanted to really thank you all for coming tonight and showing us with your enthusiasm. The next steps I wanted to talk a little bit about, and then turn it over to Maggie and Dave if you had any capping comments. But what we'll do is we will summarize the input from tonight. There were some new ideas and some nuances that we want to make sure get reflected in the plan, particularly those excellent ideas around information around, cloth diapers and other ideas, black plastics and other ideas. So we got some really good things to add into the plan. And then we also have an intake form, and I'll put them up on the screen again. I did put it in the chat here on the Zoom room. Like if you have other ideas, or if you have a neighbor who you know has other ideas and would want to hear about it, now is the opportunity. Maggie has this link up on the website, this town's website as well. And what it is just more opportunity to give input. And then once we gather that up over the next couple of weeks, we will incorporate that into the revised version of the plan, and that will make its way as a revised document. Eventually, town staff will be presenting that to the select board. Let me see if there are any comments from the working group. Wanted to shout out and say thank you to you all for helping to facilitate tonight. Any of the members of the working group want to do a shout out or have anything more to add? Okay, seeing none. How about Dave or Maggie? Did you want to add anything more at this time?
I'll just say that if you are looking for the public forum, it's in the chat, but if you're looking for it later, if you search Zero Waste on the town website, that's the page that it's listed on. But other than that, thank you very much for coming. It was really great to have a lot of new ideas. As Diane said, we're talking about this in the echo chamber often, so it's good to get new voices into the mix. So really appreciate you taking the time to come.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Right.
Good night. Good night, Maggie.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Ruth, are we staying on?
I think we're all done. Thank you
Okay.
guys so much. I think we got the notes, we're all set, and we got the recording. So thank you for coming and pitching in.
All right. Talk soon.
All right, bye.